Carl Jung pinpointed 8 markers of an exceptionally uncommon personality type. And if you recognize even half of these qualities, you're part of what I call the psychological elite. Across decades of study, Jung found that under 5% of people ever develop what he termed differentiated consciousness, a way of encountering reality that most humans never even approach. But here's the odd part. These uncommon individuals often spend their entire lives believing something is wrong with them. Jung documented case after case of people with immense psychological depth who had been told, directly or indirectly, that their intensity, their sensitivity, and their refusal to accept superficial explanations were personal defects instead of signs of exceptional mental sophistication. And here's the twist nearly everyone overlooks. Jung believed these rare personalities weren't merely different. They were evolutionarily ahead. They embodied humanity's next stage of consciousness. So today, we're going to plunge deep into Jungian psychology and uncover the 8 definitive signs of a rare personality type. If you see yourself in these patterns, everything people once told you, that you're too intense, too sensitive, too complicated, will suddenly make sense, because you're not too much for the world. The world is too little for you. Jung uncovered something that modern psychology still hesitates to fully accept. The traits that make you feel like an outsider aren't defects. They're upgrades. You're not broken, you're a breakthrough. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what happens when who you truly are doesn't fit into society's narrow, rigid boxes of normal? What if your intensity, your depth, your refusal to settle for surface-level existence are not weaknesses, but evidence of what I call advanced psychological architecture? Consider this from an evolutionary perspective. Throughout history, the individuals who pushed humanity forward were always the ones who couldn't accept the status quo. They questioned everything. They felt everything. They saw possibilities that the rest of the world couldn't even imagine. And yet, here's the tragedy. Society still trains these exceptional individuals to suppress their greatest strengths. You've probably been told more than once that you're too sensitive, too emotional, too serious, or too deep. But Jung understood that these so-called flaws are actually signs of what he called psychological differentiation. The rare ability to perceive and process reality with an intensity and complexity that most people never develop. Modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm this. Dr. Elaine Aron's research on highly sensitive people shows that roughly 20% of the population experiences sensory and emotional input more deeply. But Jung pointed to something even rarer: individuals whose entire psychological structure is built at an advanced level. And what's even more remarkable is that these people often hide their gifts because they've been taught to view them as burdens. You've learned to dim your light because others found it overwhelming. You've learned to shrink because your full size made others uncomfortable. So, let's begin revealing these rare signs, starting with the first one. Sign 1. You experience emotional depth that feels almost supernatural. Jung discovered something astonishing about emotional intensity. He found that certain individuals don't merely feel emotions. They experience what he called affect-toned complexes, emotional waves that carry layers of meaning, insight, and psychological resonance. You don't just have emotions. Emotions move through you like entire symphonies. You feel the emotional tension in a room before anyone says a word. You sense the undercurrents of people's intentions without needing them to explain anything. And here's what Jung understood that most therapists still miss. This isn't emotional instability. It's emotional sophistication. When you feel deeply, you're not overreacting. You're accessing what Jung called the objective psyche, the deeper layers of human experience that most people have learned to disconnect from. For you, everything is information. Every irritation, every shift in tone, every subtle expression becomes a pathway into understanding yourself and others on an entirely different level. Sign 2. You question reality with what I call sacred curiosity. Most people live what Jung described as unconscious lives. They follow programming they never question, habits, beliefs, and social rules they inherited from others. But you cannot stop questioning. You don't just want answers, you want truth. Jung would describe you as someone with an active thinking function, a mind wired to dig deeper. You don't simply ask what happened. You ask why it happens and what it means. Why do people tolerate relationships that drain them? Why do we accept systems that crush human potential? Why do we pretend shallow conversations are real connection? Jung called this mental ability the transcendent function, the capacity to see beyond current limitations and hold multiple layers of truth at once. But here's the cost of sacred curiosity. Your questions threaten the illusions that keep others comfortable. People who don't want to grow often feel attacked by your very existence. They accuse you of being too much, too intense, or too analytical simply because your questions disrupt their psychological comfort zone. If you've ever been told you think too deeply, it's not a flaw, it's a sign. Sign 3. You've developed what I call conscious independence. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Rare personalities learn to do this early, usually because life forced them to. According to Jung's observations, many rare individuals develop individuated consciousness earlier than most, often due to adversity, isolation, or being misunderstood. People assume your independence is a defense mechanism. It isn't, it's an achievement. You learned early that relying on others for validation is psychological quicksand. You built your identity from the inside out. You stood up, often alone, and created a sense of self that cannot be taken away by someone else's disapproval, absence, or misunderstanding. This process is what Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey toward inner wholeness. Most people avoid it because it forces them to confront their shadows. But you push through the discomfort and found clarity. Your solitude isn't loneliness. Your solitude is sanctuary. Sign 4. You possess what I call hyperperceptive awareness. Jung revolutionized psychology by recognizing intuition as a real psychological function. He described it as perception via the unconscious, the ability to see possibilities and patterns before they emerge consciously. You don't just observe people. You read them. You notice micro-expressions, energy shifts, tensions beneath the surface, the meanings in the silence. You see the story behind the behavior. You hear the truth behind the words. This is not paranoia. This is psychological sensitivity operating at advanced levels. But Jung warned, if you don't protect this sensitivity, you will burn out. You become the emotional regulator for everyone around you. You become the unassigned therapist in every room. You carry burdens that aren't yours. Sign 5. You crave meaning over everything. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But only rare individuals actually live that truth. Your psyche rejects inauthenticity. It simply won't let you pretend. You can't live for external approval. You can't participate in shallow conversations. You can't chase goals that lack soul. Your psychological makeup demands depth, alignment, and authenticity. But Jung discovered something even more fascinating about people who prioritize meaning. They often become what I call evolutionary catalysts. When you refuse to live a shallow life, you unconsciously force others to confront their own inauthenticity. Your presence alone becomes a mirror. It exposes what other people have been avoiding within themselves. And sometimes people resent you for it. They don't resent you. They resent the truth your existence reflects back at them. Sign 6. You've outgrown people and environments repeatedly. Jung once wrote, the greatest tragedy of a family is the unlived lives of the parents. But what happens when you refuse to live an unlived life? What happens when you choose authenticity over tradition, expansion over comfort? You grow, and when you grow, you shed. Jung called this process psychological death and rebirth, the shedding of outdated identities and the emergence of a more aligned self. Rare individuals go through this cycle more than most, because while others cling to familiarity, you move toward transformation. This means you've probably experienced something difficult. People who once knew you don't know you anymore. And it's not because you became difficult or distant. It's because you outgrew the version of yourself they were comfortable with. When you were shrinking, they recognized you. When you were people-pleasing, they liked you. When you suppressed your truth, they accepted you. But the moment you expanded authentically and unapologetically, you disrupted the roles they expected you to play. And this is where Jung's insight becomes crucial. Psychological evolution is irreversible. Once you awaken, you cannot go back to sleep. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot unsee what you've seen. You cannot fit into spaces that require you to disconnect from your soul. If people around you keep saying you've changed, the truth is, you've simply stopped dimming your light, and they're not used to seeing you fully illuminated. That's why I always tell rare individuals, if your growth makes others uncomfortable, comment, "My evolution is not negotiable." Sign 7. You create what I call transformational presence. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But what if you're the type of person whose presence always initiates transformation even when you don't try? Jung identified a rare psychological capacity he called holding space. The ability to be so present, so authentic, so deeply attentive that people feel safe enough to reveal truths they've never spoken aloud. You don't force change. Your authenticity activates it. When people talk to you, they feel seen, not judged, not analyzed, seen. You don't listen to respond. You listen to understand the part of them they've never understood themselves. You read what their words are trying to hide. You catch the tremble in their voice before they feel it. You sense what they can't articulate. And because of this, something powerful happens. People transform in your presence, but there's a hidden cost that Jung warned about. People with this gift often become emotional anchors for everyone else. They hold space for others so effortlessly that no one thinks to hold space for them. Jung called this helper syndrome, an unconscious pattern where rare individuals sacrifice their own emotional needs because they're so accustomed to carrying everyone else's. The solution isn't to stop caring. The solution is discernment. You must learn who deserves access to your presence because not everyone does. Sign 8. You sense a purpose that you can't fully define yet. Jung said, "Your vision becomes clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And you have been awakening for a long time. Even if your life doesn't feel figured out, there's a quiet knowing inside you, a sense that you are meant for something beyond the ordinary, something only you can bring into the world. Jung described this as the transcendent function, the inner drive toward individuation and purpose. For rare personalities, this sense of calling can feel both inspiring and frustrating. You feel pulled towards something meaningful, even if you don't know exactly what it is yet. But here's the important truth Jung discovered. Your purpose is not random. Your purpose is not vague. Your purpose is potential seeking expression. And when people like you ignore this calling, they don't just feel dissatisfied, they develop symptoms, anxiety, depression, a sense of meaninglessness. Jung explained that living out of alignment with your type creates inner conflict that no external achievement can fix. This purpose you feel isn't about fame or recognition. It's about alignment, living in harmony with your deepest nature. The 3 stages of rare psychological development. Jung identified distinct stages that rare individuals move through. Understanding these stages can help you know where you are in your own evolution. Stage 1. The unconscious outsider. You feel different, but you don't know why. Your traits feel like flaws. You try to fit in. You try to be normal. And the more you try, the more disconnected you feel. Jung observed that people in this stage often develop persona rigidity. They build a mask so polished and so socially acceptable that they lose touch with their authentic identity. You might have found yourself exhausted, anxious, misunderstood, or hiding the most interesting parts of who you are. Stage 2. The Awakening Individual. This is when you start to see your traits as gifts instead of burdens. You begin to understand Jung's concept of psychological types, and finally you see where you fit. You begin shadow integration, the process of reclaiming the parts of yourself you've been taught to reject. You stop apologizing for your depth. You stop tolerating shallow relationships. You stop allowing others to dim your light. This is the stage where you begin to choose yourself. Stage 3. The Individuated Consciousness. Now you fully integrate your rare traits into a stable, coherent identity. You know who you are. You know what matters. You know what you're here to do. You've achieved what Jung called psychological wholeness, the ability to express your authentic self while remaining connected to the world. At this stage, you become a beacon, not by intention, but by embodiment. Your authenticity gives others permission to be authentic. Your clarity helps others find their own. Your depth invites others to go deeper. You become a catalyst for collective growth simply by being who you are. If you recognize yourself in this description, comment, "I am psychologically rare and proud." The shadow forces that sabotage rare individuals. But Jung also issued a warning. The more evolved the personality, the more dangerous its shadow. Even the rarest, most advanced individuals carry unconscious patterns that can trap them. Let's break these down. 1. The superiority shadow. This is when your rarity makes you feel above others. Jung warned that this leads to arrogance, isolation, and psychological inflation. The belief that rarity equals superiority. It doesn't. It equals responsibility. 2. The messianic shadow. This is the belief that it's your duty to save everyone around you. Jung saw this as a path to burnout, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. You're here to inspire, not rescue, to guide, not carry. 3. The martyrdom shadow. This is the belief that being rare means being destined to suffer, that your depth requires sacrificing happiness, comfort, or connection. It's untrue. Your rarity is not meant to imprison you, it's meant to liberate you, but they cannot reciprocate it. This relationship dynamic drains rare individuals because you end up over-functioning while they underfunction. 2. The light dimmers. These are the people threatened by your depth. Your authenticity makes them uncomfortable because it exposes their own inauthenticity. They constantly tell you to tone it down, be more normal, not be so intense, not take life so seriously. To them, your fullness feels like a threat, so they try to shrink you, control you, contain you, make you more manageable. They're not consciously malicious, they're psychologically overwhelmed, but being around them is like trying to breathe through a narrow straw. 3. The light matches. These are the rare ones, the people who've done their own inner work. They don't need to feed on your energy or dim your light. They meet you at your depth. They match your honesty. They understand your intensity because they carry their own. These relationships feel liberating, expansive, alive. Jung believed that rare individuals thrive only when surrounded by people who possess psychological sovereignty, those who are grounded in themselves and not threatened by authenticity. Jung's most important insight: psychological discrimination. Jung said that one of the greatest signs of psychological maturity is the ability to discern who is capable of an authentic relationship and who is seeking something else. Not everyone can handle your depth. Not everyone deserves your presence. Not everyone is equipped to meet you where you are. Psychological discrimination is the skill of recognizing who drains you, who dims you, who matches you, and who elevates you. The more rare you are, the more essential this skill becomes. The responsibility of being rare. Jung believed that with rare psychological architecture comes responsibility. You're not just different for your own benefit. You're different in service of something larger. He wrote that individuals with advanced consciousness act as bridges between the unconscious and the conscious. Through your depth, your questions, your refusal to accept shallow answers, you help humanity grow. This is why you can't tolerate superficial conversations. You can't stand manipulative dynamics. You can't settle for relationships without depth. You can't accept systems that crush human spirit. Your psyche isn't being dramatic. It's being evolutionary. You were designed to see what others ignore, to question what others accept, to feel what others suppress, to grow where others remain comfortable. Your dissatisfaction isn't failure, it's guidance. The danger Jung warned about psychological inflation. Jung issued one last warning for rare personalities. The danger of believing rarity means superiority. This is what he called psychological inflation, when a person identifies too strongly with their gifts and loses humility. True psychological rarity holds both truths. You are special. Others are not less valuable. Your sensitivity is a form of intelligence, not a flaw. Your intensity is a form of power, not a problem. Your depth is a form of clarity, not an inconvenience. Your independence is a form of sovereignty, not isolation. Holding your gifts with humility is what allows them to flourish. Jung's prediction about the future of humanity. Jung believed that as humanity evolves, more people will develop these rare traits. What is extraordinary today will be normal tomorrow. What is rare now will become foundational to the next stage of human consciousness. This means something profound. You're not just personally rare, you're evolutionarily important. You represent what Jung called the leading edge of consciousness. You are what humanity is becoming. That means your struggles weren't for nothing. Your loneliness wasn't meaningless. Your sensitivity wasn't a mistake. Your intensity wasn't wrong. Every time you felt like an outsider, you were simply ahead of your time. Every time people criticized you for being too much, you were threatening their limited worldview. Every time you chose authenticity over acceptance, you expanded what's possible for human connection. Every time you refused to settle for shallow meaning, you raised the bar for what a meaningful life can be. Jung believed that psychological evolution happens through individuals like you, those who push against the boundaries of what's considered normal, those who refuse to shrink, those who question everything that others blindly follow. You aren't just living your story, you are expanding what it means to be human. Accept your rarity, with courage, not apology. This journey comes with loneliness. It comes with misunderstanding. It comes with responsibility. But Jung's final insight is perhaps the most liberating. You must learn to love your rarity without needing anyone else to understand it. You're not here to convince others of your value. You're here to embody it. You're not here to make people see your light. You're here to shine it. Some people will never understand your depth. Some will be intimidated by your questions. Some will try to shrink your intensity. Some will misinterpret your sensitivity. But Jung found that people who fully embrace their rarity eventually become magnets for others who are ready to awaken their own. You don't need everyone. You need the few who can match your consciousness. And together, you build a life that feels like truth. Your work is not to shrink, it's to evolve. The world needs your questions. The world needs your depth. The world needs your refusal to settle. The world needs your authenticity. But you must give these gifts consciously, strategically, sustainably. You must be both powerful and protective, both open and discerning. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But you're doing exactly that, and when you do, you give others permission to accept themselves too. Remember the 8 signs. Your emotional depth is intelligence. Your questioning is insight. Your independence is sovereignty. Your awareness is intuition. Your craving for meaning is alignment. Your evolution is natural. Your presence is transformational. Your purpose is awakening. If even half of these resonated with you, you're not just different. You're part of what Jung believed was humanity's next evolutionary step. You are one of the rare individuals pushing our species toward greater awareness, deeper truth, and more conscious living. Your intensity is not too much. It is exactly what the world needs to wake up. Your sensitivity is not weakness. It is advanced perception. Your depth is not a burden. It is a gift. Your rarity is not a curse. It is your power. Jung dedicated his entire life to understanding people like you because he knew one thing. You are not here to fit in. You are here to evolve the world. The world doesn't need you smaller or quieter or easier. The world needs you fully expressed, fully awakened, fully rare. If you're ready to embrace your psychological rarity without apology, comment, "I am evolutionary consciousness in human form." And if you want to understand the shadow side of sensitivity even more deeply, watch my video, Final Warning to Empaths. They're feeding on your light, where I reveal Jung's most unsettling discovery about how unconscious people drain the energy of advanced personalities. Subscribe because this journey into the depths of what makes you extraordinary is only just beginning. Remember, you're not too much. The world is too little. And Jung knew that people like you are the ones who changed that.